All right, I'll tell you what I did today. I'll tell you what I didn't do a lot of. I didn't watch much live football or anything like that. I think that I've seen more and more that people have adapted to not watching the NFL and doing other things this Sunday. So I mowed the lawn. I had, of course, an interview that you should probably watch. Look it up later. Watch it from the beginning with Simone. But I think, yeah, Simone Bononi. She is a Brazilian describing the catastrophe that's been happening in her country in terms of basically all the politicians at the top have been either impeached or they're under um, gross criminal investigations for corruption. That goes for both the left and right wing presidents and ex presidents. So please check that out. I'm going to try to organize a new Testigo Venezuela uh, episode. If anybody wants to hop on and have a stream with me, you're more than welcome. By the way, I was on Mad Dodge Productions Red Eye stream last night. I'll try to share that in the description below or even in the chat when I get a chance. Probably won't get a chance today, but I'll add it in the description afterward. Lots of fun. Talk to a couple of interesting people from across the country. And then I went to a wedding for probably my closest friend from high school. I got to meet all the douchebags from back then, all the people that the the class cutting crew that we basically spent the whole day either in the library or hanging out in the parking lot. And it was to some, you know what? It was surprisingly not as depressing as other weddings I've been to, where everybody just goes up to you and says, "Well, why ain't you married yet?" So, it was a bizarre situation there. Before I get to the topics in the title, um, this was a Jewish wedding, a Hasidic wedding, but the woman the bride was a convert, so her entire family were these kind of WASP types from out in I think the next county south, and they it was amazing watching people. They'd never, first of all, there's no mixed dancing like you'd probably expect in one of your weddings over in a Catholic wedding, for example. You just have these rings of people, usually rings of men and rings of women, dancing around like friggin' danishes, like the pastry. So you see these people jumping in for the first time. It must have been pretty surreal for them. The music taste is completely different. You don't see any, any of the stuff from Celine Dion or any of that crap, or the wedding singer stuff. Billy Idol and Alice Cooper, all those, all those cheesy wedding songs. You know, uh, or the ones that people karaoke, like the Queen songs, "Want to Break Free" or stuff like that. That you typically see in in a regular, I guess, Christian or generic wedding in the U.S. That it just isn't there. It's kind of more traditional music, but it worked. It was actually not bad at all. And I'm saying that because a couple years ago, I probably not enjoyed a wedding at all. And for something that was basically, this was an event that typically you don't see that much diversity at it, but actually, and I know this is going to sound stupid because we always, people who listen to this type of stream, we're usually the ones complaining about diversity being like a whole issue, but they didn't make it the goal. But you had not just Jews, not just these Protestants from out in the sticks, but you had people from Iran, people from China, people from Central America there, people from all over the world were there celebrating And I think it's kind of a great thing to once in a while go to an event and take a chill from all the crap that you see in the news and all the, whether it's politics or just celebrities. A lot of people, they frame their entire world around headlines, and unfortunately, I think I've become that way for a long time. So this was like a welcome respite, and so was mowing the lawn. I was mowing the lawn, just listening to the radio for 20 minutes. It was good and it was refreshing. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to being obsessed with the news. So you have this issue with the JFK files. Now, I want to say, first of all, that I don't really think it's going to make a dent in the deep state, so far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's so much dirty laundry hanging up that, in my opinion, it's going to take more than years. It's going to take generations to really figure out how deeply the CIA and possibly other the NSA, obviously the CIA, the NSA, and possibly other intelligence services have tainted American government accountability. We've become a country where, what's going on here, we have created the perfect environment for our secret intelligence services to act with impunity, and in many cases to work against American interests, in many cases to create conflicts in order to keep America involved in world policing. And the JFK assassination, before I get into Roger Stone's take on it, because Roger Stone's a brilliant analyst. Whatever you think about his opinions, he's a great analyst. Just like on the left, you have I think Glenn Greenwald's a pretty good analyst. It's to some extent of the news, and Christopher Hitchens at one point was, even though he kind of watered down his views. But let me tell you, the JFK assassination is one of those events where you can clearly see that, first of all, the official story reeks of malfeasance. Let me just minimize the window so I can really concentrate on my thoughts. JFK was a president who came to power. He came into office at the height of the Cold War. And the CIA was constantly trying to urge him to take more aggressive action to mitigate Soviet influence in throughout the world, whether it was in Southeast Asia, or it was in Latin America, or it was in Europe. Remember, there was the Berlin crisis. I think he was president during that. And for those of you that don't know, one of his shining moment as president was steering the U.S. through the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now the reality is that JFK is not nearly as good of a president as is portrayed in popular culture. He was, actually one of the more weak presidents in terms of knowing how to manage a crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis, yeah, he stood off the Soviet Union when they were trying to move in nukes to Cuba, and he deserves credit for that. The Bay of Pigs crisis and his mishandling of Castro lives with us to this day. The mishandling of Castro by Eisenhower and Kennedy, but mostly Kennedy, is a problem that lives with us to this day, and it lives with us not only in Cuba but throughout Latin America, where, thanks to American heavy-handedness towards Latin America, we created a counterculture that spawned parallel Soviet-style movements in Nicaragua and in Colombia and Venezuela, eventually in Peru. This was, or not only Soviet, but other forms of communism, Maoism, especially in Peru, was a huge problem. JFK, if he would have not I think what he should have done, in retrospect, was to open a clear channel of diplomacy with Castro initially. Give it a chance. I'm not saying that Castro would have ended up being a good benign dictator, as they call it, like was described of Yugoslavia during the Cold War, but it could have been avoided. What became effectively the biggest thorn in America's side since that era, and it spawned more conflicts, not just not just in Latin America, but in Africa. Castro, just so you know, sponsored rebellions in the Congo that were anti-American. Therefore, the United States had to back another dictator over there, Joseph Mobutu. That's another dark chapter in American history. Do we know that Mobutu's opponent or his predecessor, Lumumba, would have ended up being a democratic leader? I don't know. It could be he would have ended up as being another communist dictator. But you can't assume, based on hypotheticals, that the United States dodged a bullet there. Mobutu ended up being a brutal, ridiculously corrupt and inept, incompetent dictator. He was overthrown in the 90s after the Cold War was kind of it was over. The CIA had already pulled out its assets, and that's the whole problem. That by the way, my cough is back. I think it's because of the winter. When you have the United States sponsor a dictatorial regime during a major conflict, like what happened in Brazil, or not in Brazil, in Zaire, formerly known as the Congo, and then later renamed the Congo again, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and then the conflict is over, what does the CIA usually do? They pull out all of their sponsorships. That's what happened in Afghanistan. That's what happened in other parts of the world. I'd say a good example of that is in the Middle East. We had Egypt as an ally during the Cold War for part of it. Once the Cold War was over, we did support Mubarak to a degree for a while, but eventually we let them drift and they fell apart. Iran was a country where we had a sympathetic government since the 1950s after we overthrew a hostile leader, Mossadegh, and whatever you want to say, we enabled this Shah to become this ridiculous, this hard, iron-fisted dictator. We let him do that, and people wonder why Iran eventually fell into a revolution and these fanatical tyrants came to power that are anti-American. So, look, I may be sounding a lot like Ron Paul today, saying that the Americans caused all these problems, but you can't look. I can't blame America entirely, but you can't say that America was not involved, and that's what happened with this Kennedy assassination. Okay, John F. Kennedy came to power. He burned a lot of bridges through his dad. He burned a lot of bridges in order to consolidate his power. And what you have to understand is that when you burn bridges with the mob, as he did when he named his brother to prosecute the mob as attorney general, and the unions, which he did also, same thing. When you alienate the FBI by having a personal feud with J. Edgar Hoover, and when you embarrass the CIA by failing during the Bay of Pigs, you create a lot of enemies. So we don't know, and I don't know if these files will say who was the party that was closest to this issue, because through the years there's been so many parties that have been named as possible real culprits behind the assassination, as opposed to the lone gunman verdict of the Warren Commission, saying that Lee Harvey Oswald basically performing a gymnast and marksman feat at the same time, killing JFK, almost killing his wife, and almost killing the governor of Texas. I think his name was John T. Connally. There have been so many alternative culprits. There's the Cuban government. There's Cuban exiles. There's the Soviets. There's Carlos Marcello and Sam Giancana. Who else is there? People say that Hoover did it. People say that the military did it. People say that the CIA did it. And it's often mentioned, especially on the left, that the assassination of JFK happened within weeks of him authorizing the CIA to look the other way when a military coup murdered the prime minister and his brother and most of his family of South Vietnam. This was this was the United States letting happen a military dictatorship in a country where they were supposedly instilling democracy. Well, under the previous regime, it wasn't democracy either, but this was ending the charade of it. And that's pretty much why I think that the CIA, you can watch all the damn Tom Clancy movies you want. What was it, Clear and Present Danger, and Rainbow Six, all of those. Give me a break. The CIA has never been a positive influence in the world. They've always been this shadowy group of people that they're Yale or Harvard educated elites that they want to protect the state's influence throughout the world, the United States government's influence throughout the world. They're not looking necessarily for the interests of the American public, okay? Because there's no reason that Americans would want America to be trading in heroin from Southeast Asia, as the CIA had done for a time, or in cocaine from South America in order to supply arms to anti-communist groups over there. Well, we made a deal that we would sell things like cocaine and heroin in our own country and throughout the world. And I don't like to dump on the United States, but I have no problem dumping on the CIA. I think the CIA is the quintessential expression of everything that we've allowed this country to become, that has covered up and profaned the original mission of our founders. And I'm wondering if you guys think so too. So let's take a look at what Roger Stone says about this. It says, President Trump tweeted his plan to allow the release of National Archive files on the JFK assassination after chatting by phone Thursday with his on-again, off-again outside advisor, Roger Stone, who wrote The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. There's another one I forgot to mention, his vice president, Lyndon Johnson. To get a sense of what he told Trump, I asked Stone what he expects to learn from the truth. Stone thinks the main takeaway will be that Lee Harvey Oswald's ties to the CIA and FBI were longer and more extensive than has ever been proven. I then asked if the documents would cause chaos. He said, no, everyone who is involved is dead. The American people like transparency. They just leave it off there. I don't like the way that they did it. So here's from Reuters. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Saturday that, subject to receipt of further information, he planned to allow the opening of long secret files on the November 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy, due for release next week. Politico magazine earlier quoted Trump administration and other U.S. government officials as saying the president would almost certainly block the release of information from some of the thousands of classified files which the U.S. National Archives is scheduled to make public by an October 26th deadline. Subject to the receipt of further information, I will be allowing as president the long blocked and classified JFK files to be opened, Trump said in a tweet. The president believes that these, I think I just read this, so sorry. The November 22nd, 1963 assassination cut short Camelot as the 1,000 days of the Kennedy presidency became known. Kennedy was 46 and remains one of the most admired U.S. presidents. Thousands of books, articles, TV shows, movies, and documentaries have been produced about the assassination, and surveys have shown a majority of Americans still distrust official evidence pointing to Lee Harvey Oswald as the sole killer. Despite serious questions about the official inquest and theories purporting that organized crime, Cuba, or a cabal of U.S. security agents was involved, conspiracy theorists have yet to produce conclusive proof Oswald acted in consort with anybody. Over the years, the National Archives has released most documents related to the case, but a final batch amounting to tens of thousands of pages remains, and only Trump has the authority to decide whether some should continue to be withheld or released in redacted form. The Washington Post and other media have quoted officials as saying that government agencies have lobbied Trump to withhold some of the documents, arguing they could expose relatively recent intelligence and law enforcement operations. What bullshit. Philip Sheenon, the author of the political article and of the book on the assassination, said he did not think the last batch of papers contained any major bombshells, but may shed light on the activities of Oswald while he was traveling in Mexico City in late September 1963 and courting Cuban and Soviet spies. From the record we already have, we know he met there with Soviet spies and Cuban spies and other people who might have wanted Kennedy dead. It is going to be very interesting to see what else the government knew about the threat Oswald might pose. I'm looking ahead to something that I'm about to say. How much more they learned about his trip in Mexico City and whether or not they bungled evidence to suggest he was a threat. Sheenon said it would be interesting, too, to see if there was anything in the documents to substantiate comments Trump made during the election campaign linking Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz's father to Oswald. It's a president's favorite conspiracy theory about the Kennedy assassination, but I don't think there is. Cruz's father, Raphael, has called Trump's allegations that he was pictured with Oswald in New Orleans before the assassination ludicrous. Okay. So I think we can agree that based on previous things Trump has talked about that have come true, even something as ridiculous as that you can't rule out. That's the first thing. Second thing, I have to say about the Kennedy assassination. I am no fan of the Kennedy family or of JFK, even though I was not even close to being alive when he was born. And the whole image of Camelot and the Kennedys being this, the face of American idealism is, I think, one of the biggest phony issues in America. The Kennedys were corrupt to the core way before JFK became president. His dad is one of the most notorious white collar criminals in the history of the country. He was one of the stock market manipulators that caused the 1929 crash. Later, they appointed him to found the SEC. So they actually appointed a white collar criminal in order to prosecute white collar criminals, which has worked before. I'm not going to say what might have been a good idea, but then he appoints him. His dad was a notorious hater of the British and the Jews. He hated Jews and he hated the British. So what does President Roosevelt do? He appoints him ambassador to Britain, and he tells the British to surrender during World War II. He says, you know what? This whole war thing, you're just going to lose people, and why suffer all these casualties? You might as well surrender to the Germans. I mean, the Germans are reasonable people, and they'll probably cut you a nice compromise or something. So he was very unpopular among the British during the war because he would just cower in the countryside while they were taking massive hits all the time. And once the war started, or the American phase of the war started, I think that his star began to sink. The star began to fall, and he eventually, I think, he went back to the United States. Roosevelt died anyway, and then he started laying the groundwork for his children. Now, his oldest son, Joe Kennedy III. So this was Joe. I think no, this must have been Joe Kennedy. Let me see here. It's Joseph P. Kennedy. I think it's senior. Yeah. So he was senior. So he had a son, Joseph Jr., who was JFK's brother, older brother, who died during the war. He was a pilot who was flying during the war, and he got killed. So you have to respect their family. Most of them served in the war. I think I don't think Bobby served in the war. I think he was too young, and so was Ted Kennedy. But there's there's also the myth of PT-109, which was Kennedy's ship. That the legend is that he survived the sinking of it. A lot of people claim that he was responsible for allowing it to get sunk. It's a funny situation when you have people that they've acquired this legendary status, and then there's a substantial public that they are, it's the same thing. This was the Clintons years ago, the same idea that there's such a huge segment of the American public that worships these people, and then a comparable portion of the American people just despises them and don't trust a thing that they say. And I think because of the Kennedy assassination and the assassination of his brother, that the country sort of gives them a wider berth. But I know people that they've given me credible stories that the Kennedy curse is not only real, but it actually is a curse placed on them because of the despicable behavior of the dad, Joe Kennedy Sr. And the fact is that, like they said, well, Camelot was 1,000 days. What was Camelot? It was this illusion of noble White House with this photogenic young president and his wife, who was stunning, and his kids, and the brother and everything. America loved the Kennedys. They seemed like the new reformers, and they created the new frontier. They said that they would go to outer space, land and moon by the end of the 60s. That was one of his promises. That's why they loved him. They didn't. If they would have known at the time that Kennedy was part of the whole machinery of government that would allow the CIA to really get out of control. He wasn't the person who started it. That was obviously Truman and Eisenhower, but he really let them get away with murder, literally murder in the Congo and murder in South Vietnam. And South Vietnam, there was not a communist that they murdered. They murdered a leader who was actually very anti-communist. Not a great guy himself, but it bears mentioning that the Kennedys were involved in a lot of the more seedy aspects of American foreign policy back then, and in domestic policy. It's not as if Kennedy was a huge fan of the civil rights movement from the start. He was somebody who kind of gave lip service to it, and eventually he did give some public recognition to Dr. King. And that's about it. So yeah, I don't know if that's about it for this topic. I don't know if JFK's files are going to reveal anything that really confirms or refutes one of these theories that I've been any of these theories that I've been reading over the years. I did read a few books on the assassination, and I think that it would be very helpful if we got something that would reveal that the Warren Commission was a hoax, and that we've been lied to all these years, and that the authorities really did know that Oswald didn't do it, that he was some sort of a pawn in the game. Next, we're going to Frederica Wilson, the congresswoman from Broward County, Florida. This person, believe me, I don't know if you think, I don't know if you agree with me, but she is going to ensure that the Democrats don't make any progress next year. And I'll explain why. People don't want somebody who plainly mugs for the camera at every opportunity. And when you see somebody in these garish outfits go in front of a camera and yell incoherently or cry, basically, I saw this interview with her on CNN on Friday, and she's turning on the water leaks all the time, basically crying on camera. When a day before, when a reporter asked her about the response by General Kelly, she said, "Well, I'm just going to have to tell my kids I'm a rock star." That in the long term is not going to bode well for her, because first of all, and I don't know what the veracity of Kelly's allegations against her are. I think there's evidence that he was kind of wrong. I think there's evidence that she's been behaving the way that he accuses her of. Frederica Wilson is somebody who, somewhere along the way, the more that you put her in front of a camera, the more out of whack she's going to seem. And I caught it on Friday. This interview she did on CNN, she actually started talking about the U.S. mission in Western Africa, and about how her office had been fighting in order to get the United States involved in the fight against Boko Haram. So, problems with that. The first thing is that she's now calling this Trump's Benghazi. Look, the reason Benghazi was such an issue was because American troops or American assets had been put in Benghazi with absolutely no protection there, okay, by the Obama administration, who also put troops in Africa, in Western Africa. It was the Obama administration. So, then you start to get into the haggling over, was Trump to blame for the failure of the mission? Was Obama to blame? It's not Obama, because the mission happened under Trump. But the fact is that that Congress, Republicans and Democrats, ended up voting in order to send troops to Niger. It's not the same as with Benghazi. This was an effort that was with the agreement of those governments there, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Cameroon, I think. Those are the 4 countries that are part of that coalition. And then, listen to this. So she knew this. She knows this. She's been a part of the effort. She's been part of this whole, the whole ridiculous Bring Back Our Girls movement by Michelle Obama that did literally nothing, because it showed this pathetic first lady begging these cold-blooded murderers, the Boko Haram, these ISIS murderers in Nigeria. That didn't do anything. Why would she even claim that did anything? If somebody's willing to kidnap hundreds of girls from villages and either rape them or force them into marriages, why do you think some photo of you with a hashtag sign would change anything? And it didn't. And we're seeing that what had to end up happening, which is, it's obviously not the ideal case, is that you do have to defeat them militarily. That's what happened in Iraq. Recently, people don't even talk about it. I don't think I've even mentioned it so much. But the Trump administration fully backed a military effort to destroy ISIS militarily in the Middle East. Will they be able to defeat them socially? that's an open question that I don't think so. Okay, I personally don't know how long it's going to take for ISIS to fizzle out, if we can even do it, because it's an idea. It's a mentality. The ISIS mentality has to be destroyed, and is that something within the control of the United States? I mean, we've been indirectly responsible for propagating it, because American money has gone to jihadist groups over the past. You know, we've dealt with them before. So, you know, that's a good question. But for her to call this Trump's Benghazi is ridiculous, because we're not talking about a diplomatic mission, okay, that was underprotected. We're talking about a military mission, and which by the way are typically taken in small groups in this type of setting, and the number of troops was not determined by Donald Trump. It was determined by Barack Obama. Okay, now is Trump in any way to blame? Yes. I mean, it happened under his watch. You can't blame anybody else for what literally happened, but that does not make it a Benghazi situation. What Benghazi is a mission over in Libya, a war zone created by a war that was sanctioned by the US and a number of EU countries, that left a power vacuum in Libya. And this consulate was in a zone, it was in a war zone between different jihadist factions, and there was not adequate protection sent there. That's what Benghazi was. And the whole scandal was whether Hillary Clinton even tried to respond to it. Okay, she was the person responsible for guaranteeing the safety of Ambassador Stevens and the rest of his crew. You know, these security guards. She didn't do it. In Trump's case, in Niger, these are people that were sent by the previous administration to perform a military mission, and in one of those engagements, there were 4 casualties, fatalities. And you know, we'll have to obviously put together an investigation, figure out what happened there. But to compare that to Benghazi is ludicrous. It doesn't even they're not even in the same ballpark. The other issue with Benghazi, which you should probably remember, is that the Obama administration literally lied for weeks about the motive behind it. The same thing can't be said about the Trump administration, because they know for a fact that it was committed by a group that is affiliated with Boko Haram/ISIS. So the deception, the pulling the wool over Americans' eyes, is not there. Okay, yes, there are issues that Wilson raised about why one of the troops, this LaDavid Johnson, was not retrieved at the proper time. But that does not make it a Benghazi. That could make it, well, in that case, okay, why were, I think it was 3 or 4 troops, but I could be wrong, in Mogadishu in 1993, under Clinton, under a mission also started under President Bush. Then why wasn't that Clinton's Benghazi back in 1993? That does not make it. The fact that a mission went awry and casualties were suffered does not make it a Benghazi situation. Yeah, J-Man's talking a lot of trash about Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure what that has to do with today, but I have to say I agree, even though I don't even know what you're talking about. So Frederica Wilson, another thing I noticed was that during her interview with CNN, where she claimed that she was up to par with all, or up to date with all the goings on with this mission in Africa, she happened to say that the name of one of the countries being, in the alliance was Chan, not Chad, Chan. Okay, so this woman, and people should really point it out, and you should go back to the video, and if you can find the video, and I'll find a link to it. And I'll put it in the chat right now. I want you to go find the part where she says that there was a mission in Chan, okay? Not in Chad, in Chan, which is obviously a country that doesn't even exist. This is from Friday. Yeah, I have the link and I'm putting it in the chat, and you can go look for it. That's your homework for today. That's right, J-Man. You take that dagger and you go forth and you stab at that Chan lie. That's what we have to do today. So why am I bringing that up? There is this profound ignorance on the Democratic, and you know, Trump has his share of stupid slip-ups too. But when you go in front of the media and you start talking about foreign affairs and you have no friggin' clue what you're talking about, then it's time for people to go and expose it to the fullest. And this has happened a lot of times with members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And I'm trying to say this as delicately as I can. The CBC is a collection of the worst representatives of their community. The people of America that are black or African American should probably go and do a conference just dedicated to how to rid themselves of these people that are called the CBC, and replace them with somebody else, whoever. You know, they could elect, you know, Wendy Williams, for all I care, would be a bet. And I have nothing against her, but I don't think her show's the deepest material. You have to find, in my opinion, people that will actually, you know, make you not look like fools. And these people, I'll start with, I think, Sheila Jackson Lee of Houston. She once said that, you know, she was glad that North and South Vietnam came to a peaceful resolution that ended the Vietnam War. Well, as you probably know, that didn't happen. The peaceful resolution was the fall of Saigon to the North Vietnamese in a military invasion in 1975. This is a woman who lived through that. Okay, so, and she starts talking about, oh, it's good that we were able to get peace between North and South Vietnam. Well, thank you. I'm happy that happened based on your version of reality. That's just one person, Sheila Jackson Lee. There was also another guy, Hank Johnson of Atlanta. Sheila Jackson Lee is from the Houston area. Hank Johnson, you can go look for the clip. And everything I'm saying right now, you can find, there's video of it from the Congressional Record, a C-SPAN. Okay, you can type in Sheila Jackson Lee, Vietnam. Okay, I'm pretty sure it was her. But this next guy, Hank Johnson, this is for sure. You can look it up. Look up Guam. There was a portion where he was asking an American military officer, I think it was a naval officer, about a proposed base on the island of Guam, and he actually asked him if there was a risk that if the base had too much weight, if the island would capsize. Okay, that's the guy representing the people of Atlanta. Okay, you know, I'm not trying to be a dick to people, but you know, they don't represent their community well. Okay, that's number two. Then you have Corrine Brown, who was recently convicted of charity fraud, and this was $1.2 million, I believe, in her personal charity was funneled through her and her assistant. This woman, let me see what was the most. I mean, there were so many. Let me see here, Corrine Brown. So what you have to see if you want to be entertained is her claim that she goes up to the podium when the Gators won the national championship in 2009, I think, and she has this almost incoherent rant where she she starts, saying go Gata, and she can barely read. Okay, and this woman was a congresswoman for 20 years. Um, then last year, while she was being indicted, she compared her indictment to the Orlando shooting. She said that both the indictment and the shooting were comparable crimes against America. Not that what she had done was a crime, but that she was indicted for it was a crime. Um, there's lots of clips of her just going nuts. This was a woman who had like a beehive wig. She was an older lady from Gainesville. And I think Gainesville is a nice, there's nice people there, or not Gainesville. She's actually from Jacksonville, which is a larger metro area. Um, and then there was another time when she was spotted claiming benefits from FEMA that she didn't deserve and she wasn't eligible for. And that's Corrine Brown. But she's not in Congress anymore. I think she's awaiting sentencing or something. That's Corrine. So those of you that are keeping score, that's 3 members of the CBC that are just ridiculous morons. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, a J-man's like saying, I don't think you're being a dick by saying the truth. The truth is not always nice. Well, I think people need to look, if there are people besides me saying this stuff, and if you ask people from those areas of the country, in Jacksonville, in Houston, in Atlanta, they know that their representative isn't the smartest bulb in the chandelier. And I have a representative here in Cleveland. Her name is Marcia Fudge. She doesn't do as many embarrassing things, but she doesn't do many good things either. She's good at keeping out of the public eye. She was, I think, last session she was the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about her. I'm not saying that she's a horrible person, but you don't hear her name associated with anything important. She's never initiated anything. I think she hasn't been with the majority party for very, very often during her time in Congress, but I think she was in office during the Pelosi years when she was Speaker of the House. So these people, they keep getting elected and reelected, and nothing happens. They don't do anything important, and nobody cares because they're used to voting for the same person. And even people that are Democrats know that if they would run against this person, they couldn't get traction. I live in a machine city. I don't know who you are out there, the 3 of you that are watching this at this moment, but you could be living in a machine city if you live in Newark, or if you live in I think Chicago is the most egregious example. San Francisco. If you live in even the Dallas area, even large metro areas in so-called red states, typically have Democratic machines. And then you go out in the countryside, you see that I don't know if you could call the Republicans a machine, but I think that in certain cases there is no Democratic Party. There's no competition, and that's one of the reasons that we have a broken system. That you have a horrible, horrible Democratic Party in urban areas that are strangling the creativity of the people living there, whatever persuasion they belong to, and they're just fine with them living there in squalor. In the countryside, you have Republican legislators that also don't give a shit about their constituents many times. I think it's a two-headed monster. So we still haven't gotten to Frederica Wilson because Maxine Waters, obviously you probably know, is also one of these morons in the CBC. Now, with Maxine Waters, you also have the added element of corruption. Because her husband has been involved in a number of bank irregularities during the bailout period. I think I scared 2 people off. but you'll be back someday, guys. You'll be back. Here, this guy crawled right back. Guy or girl, whatever you are, You're welcome back, and you can come back anytime and talk shit about the CBC or whoever. Um, there's a real issue with Maxine Waters, which is that not only is she corrupt, but she has had influence in the past within the Democratic Party, and because of her so-called devotion to the resistance, she's been elevated to a status of icon in the Democratic fold. But if you look into her past, this is a woman who's ignorant. She's an idiot. She's done very little to actually better the lives of the Black Americans that she represents. This is a woman who she once claimed that Russia had invaded Korea, which was one of the reasons that she believed that they were helping Donald Trump. Um, this is a woman puts out tons of just ignorant statements all the time. She said, I think over the weekend, this kind of got lost in the shuffle of the Frederica Wilson debacle. She said, I'm ready to take out Donald Trump tonight. This is not me saying this is her, so don't send it to me. I'm quoting Maxine Waters. She said that she would take out Donald Trump tonight. I think she said that Saturday. These people, they have to realize that you're there to work for people that sent you there. You're not there to work for getting camera time and basically looking good in your stupid dress or hat or whatever it is. And I think that Frederica Wilson, it's the same idea. It's these statements that she made. She said that. Yeah, I just looked at J-Man's comment. I'm gonna minimize the chat because every time a comment pops up, I kind of lose track of what I'm trying to say. But um, another thing that Frederica Wilson, she claimed that John Kelly's comment about her being one of those empty barrels that make the most noise, she said that that's racist. It's a metaphor, you fucking moron. It's a fucking metaphor. Because it's a metaphor, what is it? So I have to assume now that Frederica Wilson thinks that metaphors are racist. Okay, and she said that on live TV. So this is somebody, she's obviously in this in order to attract attention to her and her whatever the fuck she does in over in South Florida and this is a woman, she's never complained about her neighboring Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her horrible treatment of progressives within the Democratic Party who, like, I give a shit. I'm not a progressive, I'm not a Democrat. But it's plainly just abuse what that woman did. Abuse. She hasn't commented about the whole Awan Brothers scandal, which, let me see, she might even be involved in it. I'll tell you real quick. Because a lot of the CBC members were. Yeah, it says here. Okay, this is from 3 days ago. I need to. But here's from the Daily Caller, August 29th. Those of you that don't know, the Awan brothers, where they were allegedly spying within the in Congress, possibly passing information to Pakistani. So yeah, she was one of the people that employed him, employed one of the Awan brothers. What the fuck is going on here? Discover? I don't want a Discover card. No. Fuck you, assholes. Sorry about that profanity, guys. I mean, I know that you don't expect that from this highbrow program, but I don't want a Discover card. Anyway, yeah, there were dozens of House members that were, part of this whole mess with the Awan brothers, and one of them was Frederica Wilson. Yeah, this is from the Miami New Times. Here are the unanswered questions about Wasser. You piece of shit. I don't want to print this. No. Cancel. What the fuck? Cancel. What the hell is going on here? So anyway, there's this Miami New Times article. It's not really cooperating with me. But yeah, they mentioned that she was one of the people that contracted the Awan brothers. So she goes bitches the whole time about this being Trump's Benghazi. Your president, the one that you supported, Barack Obama, sent those troops over there to Nigeria and Niger and Chan, or as they call it in the real world, Chad, and Cameroon, and he put them there. Okay, it's not like Donald Trump put them there. And every time casualties happen in the field, that doesn't cause a national scandal. Okay, yes, an investigation, yes, that doesn't make it Benghazi. Okay, and if she wants to throw that around, she's going to be very disappointed when it simply won't stick. Next on the agenda, let me just close some of these windows. So we're going to work our way to the NFL because that's not the most important issue, obviously, but articles about that. But first, we're going to talk about Venezuela very briefly. I do want to do another episode on it. They had a recent regional election. The government party won most of the seats, but it's very hard to verify the vote now because of a number of issues, including that there are no credible international monitors there. But since then, Venezuela has been not defaulting, but missing payments for a lot of its debt. So at some point, I mean, they're already talking about the Bitcoinization of Venezuela. So it says PDVSA, which is the oil monopoly there, they need to pay $841 million in principal plus interest on a bond. Let me see here. I think it's 2 weeks from now. So, and they've already missed a $350 million payment. Yeah, in the next 2 weeks, they have $2 billion of major payments coming due. And if they're not going to do it, I think they're going to end up having to sell more of their assets to China, Russia, and Iran. So those of you that haven't been following the Testigo Venezuela series, I think I already have 6 or 7 episodes of it. You should check it out. Basically, what they've done is they like as socialism does, they seize control of all of these companies, and PDVSA is the most important one, the oil conglomerate there. And they appointed a lot of their cronies to the directorships and even to technical departments. But now, since they appointed all these morons to it, a lot of the major jobs done within the company are actually done by people that are imported from abroad, especially from Iran and Russia. And in terms of the military, they're basically being propped up by the Cubans. You could say now that Venezuela is a state that's being sucked dry of its oil by their allies. Okay, and pretty soon, because of this crisis, this debt crisis, you're going to see other countries kind of abandon their sponsorship. You're going to, for example, you have Ecuador is already doing that. They've arrested their president, who was a huge, or not their president, their current vice president, who was an ally of their previous president. They are, I think, they're drifting away from Venezuela's orbit because they can't take this economic chaos anymore. Um, you have just a country that's in starvation. There's I talked earlier with um, Simone Bononi. If you want, again, check it out. I have the interview already in the description, where she describes there's tens of thousands of Venezuelans flowing across the border to Brazil. This is through rainforest. Okay, they're going through wild country, Brazilian Venezuelan rainforest in order to escape this hellhole. Okay, so we're gonna keep following that story. I've heard people tell me, what the fuck do you care about Venezuela? Well, how about you look at Venezuela? You wait till some shit like that comes to your country. Okay, comes to the state of Illinois. Maybe it isn't as bad conditionally, but there's plenty of parallels between Illinois and Venezuela in terms of the debt, in terms of the crime, in terms of the social chaos, in terms of the corruption and the decay of social fabric. So people who ask me that, I kind of have to ask them, don't you think that sometimes things that happen around the world could have some sort of, that they could have some sort of reflection on what you do? Don't you think? That's really my answer to them. So then J-Man says the Awan brothers, man, they put that one under the rug quick. Well, I think eventually that's going to blow up too. Somebody is going to have to take the fall from that. I don't know who it will be. They might throw Schultz under the bus for that too. I don't think that Frederica Wilson will be one of the people, but once somebody gets blamed for that and gets thrown into prison, and it will probably have to be one of these Congress people, and Schultz is as good a candidate as anybody. Um, people are going to avoid them like lepers. He said, yeah, I had my computer bug out on me the other day. I think it's the upgrades that mess it up. I think he was talking about that page I had an issue with. Bitcoin, I thought you'd never ask my favorite thing to invest into at the moment next to Vertcoin. Can you send me, I don't know if I have an email up, but please send me some information on Vertcoin, because I heard about that. I'm kind of thinking about investment choices myself. Since they both will be institutions for safeguarding one's once well-earned monetary value. And then he says, I hope Venezuela and Catalonia propel Bitcoin like a catapult. Yeah, I've heard some similar issue with Catalonia and Bitcoin. The people deserve their own money. That's the dream, at least hopefully will be a reality soon. Yeah, so I'm updated on the chat here. And unfortunately, there's only one guy in the chat right now. The other guy can also pipe in anytime. 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 Anyway, next topic. What do we have left? We did Frederica Wilson and JFK files, Venezuela. I talked a little about my day. We're going to get to the NFL. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be unhappy with the NFL scores today. Not me, because the one game I care about turned out very well, the Dallas game. But I didn't get to see it because I was at a wedding, so who cares? So people want to think, this politics is what's driving the attendance drift in the NFL. And some people want to think that. Some people will reject that. They'll say, oh, you know what the fuck you're talking about. It has nothing to do with politics. There's related issues, okay? One of the issues is, yes, there is a political disconnect between a large sector of Americans, especially in states where there are no NFL teams. Look at voted 2-1. 2-1 they voted for Donald Trump. They're not going to keep watching the NFL in the same numbers that they used to. You look at a state like Wyoming, a state like these states that are super red. Do they add up to the majority of the public? No, but there's a lot of them. And in the NFL, remember, we're not talking about a league that reflects the American electorate. We're talking about, I think, disproportionately there are conservative people watching the NFL. Disproportionately, it's not to say that there aren't liberals watching the NFL, but there are disproportionately large numbers of conservatives watching the NFL, and that's why, for example, this analysis, the Nate Silver analysis, I think I'll try to put it on screen if it doesn't fuck with me. I could cut out at any time. This computer's known for screwing me while I'm live streaming. I think it's this one. It was September 27th. Is Trump's NFL critique exploiting divides or creating them? No, this is some stupid thread with Nate Silver. Okay, so September 25th, it says NFL protests may be unpopular now, but that doesn't mean they'll end that way. Civil rights protests, almost by definition, begin as unpopular. Well, that's if you assume this is a civil rights protest. Okay, they have to take into account that a lot of people don't consider this a civil rights protest, and that's why there's such a disconnect between the NFL and the fans now. So he had this poll: do you approve or disapprove of football players protesting by kneeling during the national anthem? And the share who approved that were white was about 25% plus, and the share that approved of it that were black was a little less than 75%. Now, think about that. The larger share of the population is the white people anyway, so only a little more than a quarter of them think it is appropriate. And the smaller share of the population is the blacks, and a little less than 3/4 of them. So by default, the anthem is not thought of as being appropriate. Do you think it's appropriate or inappropriate for NFL players to kneel? So this was a separate poll. Yeah, so there's a separate poll that actually predicted that less black people thought it was appropriate. And then players in the NFL and other sports are kneeling or locking arms together for the national anthem to protest racial inequality in the United States. Do you consider this to be a respectful or disrespectful way to bring attention to their concerns? And then that was a higher proportion of whites said that it was appropriate, and a higher percentage of blacks also. Now, it doesn't matter, because in either case, the majority of whites said it was not appropriate, and a substantial number of blacks. And when I say substantial, I'd say over 20% is enough. Because remember, there's only 12% of the U.S. population is African American. Now, this by default means that, first of all, again, they're dividing America between two races. They're not asking Asian Americans. They're not asking Mexicans. They're not asking Cuban Americans. You know, that would be, if you look at some of the controversies in the past 5 years with Ozzie Guillen and with Colin Kaepernick, the Cubans generally take a hard right stance. I don't know if it's going to keep being that way, but I know a few Cubans that are, you know, they're hardcore right wing. They make me kind of look like, you know, George McGovern or something. And I want to say this: the NFL is really throwing itself into a pike field. That's what they're doing. They're throwing. Have you ever seen that scene in a Braveheart where the English cavalry charges into a wall of stakes? That's what the NFL is doing. And I'll read you a few scores from this weekend. So there's the Chiefs-Raiders game, which by all accounts was pretty good. On Thursday night, though, which doesn't have a very good viewing audience because of the way streaming works, and not a lot of people have NFL Network. Then you have the Ravens losing to the Vikings. That's not that important of a game. The Dolphins and the Jets. I saw photos of the audience there, the attendance. And most of the stadium was empty in Miami, and they still won. But that says something about the way the Miami public is reacting to the way their players are protesting the anthem. I believe, because or remember, Miami is not, okay, so there's the political angle of it. Okay, so you can accept some of the fans did not like it, but you know, maybe some of the fans stayed away from a different reason, and that reason could be, as you've seen with the Miami Heat and the Marlins and the Florida Panthers, that Miami simply isn't really a sports city. It's kind of a, you know, a leisure city. People go out, you know, a lot of retirees, people who've relocated, you know, more of the club scene, stuff like that. So the Dolphins are fucked either way. What are they supposed to say? A, yes, our politics are fucking over our attendance. Or B, people don't give a fuck about football in Florida, and we have no hope of gaining fans, even if we're good. There is no winning strategy there. That's what you don't understand, you fucking idiot protesters. You've boxed yourself into a corner. There's no way you can help the league become more popular this way. You can't compare yourself to Jackie Robinson, because in the 1950s, baseball was the only form of sports entertainment there was. Not like today. Not when you have NASCAR and tennis and the NBA and the NHL and you know, esports and all the other shit. People can just play Madden on their own console if they want. They don't need to watch a game if they find it boring. They don't need to watch a game if they find it offensive. You know, and there's some people who do that. I don't know if it's a majority, but you'd have to agree that it's a substantial portion at this point. I mean, that's the Miami game. So that's just an angle. That was a close game. Now notice this one. The Rams were hosting the Cardinals, and they won 33-0. Now, people, first of all, Arizona, I guess they do have a good sports market, and I've seen games where they're hosting, and they do have a good audience, a good attendance figure. But you're getting destroyed 33-0 on the road against the Rams, who have poor attendance. Yeah, you're going to be losing TV numbers there. There's no way that game had good TV numbers. Then the next game, the Jaguars versus the Colts, 27-0. The Jaguars beat the Colts in Indianapolis. I saw photos that the stadium was virtually empty for much of the game. Who wants to watch their team get destroyed 27-0 by Jacksonville, a team that doesn't have any, you know, obvious stars? Nobody. It's a fact. Don't talk to me about passion and everything. People want to go to a game and see something that is really going to make an impression on them, and they're not getting it. Then the Seahawks beat the Giants. I think that was in New York. Not much for me to say about that. I think that had good attendance. You know, the Giants do have a good fan base, so far as I know. And then the Patriots beat the Falcons. I think they were leading like 20-0 at some point, and then the Falcons got a touchdown in garbage time. No, you're not. This was the prime time game of the week. I think plenty of people just tuned out. They were like, no, we're not going to keep watching a blowout. The Saints beat the Packers on the road. No Aaron Rodgers. They still have Drew Brees. I don't know how big of a draw Drew Brees is on TV. I think he's a fantastic quarterback, but you know, with no Aaron Rodgers playing, I think it diminished the importance of the game. And then you had the Bears beating the Panthers. I saw photos of that stadium virtually empty. The Bills beating the Buccaneers at home. I think the Bills, I'll have to take a look, because that, first of all, that was a 30-27 barn burner. I could believe Buffalo had a good attendance and TV. Then you have the Cleveland Browns losing at home to the Titans in overtime. No touchdowns, only field goals. Do you think people are really going to watch that? No. People are not going to watch these games. I'm getting repetitive, obviously. Then you have the Bengals losing 29-14 on the road to the Steelers. The Steelers have already lost a massive audience because of the anthem protest. That I think Pittsburgh had the worst fan reaction of any part of the country. I don't know why it's in Pittsburgh. It could be that, coal country has a lot of veterans and people. I saw more videos from Steeler country of people burning jerseys than not, and it's weird because I have a number of friends that are Steelers fans. Nice people, even though fuck the Steelers, but they did very well in this game. It's a good question whether people are starting to watch again. I don't know. And then the Chargers blanked the Broncos 21-0 at home. Yeah, I don't think that one was on TV anyway. So, and then of course there was the Cowboys destroying the 49ers 40-10. And I'll tell you what, the 49ers are an excellent barometer of where this protest is going. They have the most progressive public in the country there. And, they are, geez. Okay, I see that link that you sent me. Yeah, J-Man, put that in the comments when you're done. Okay, I'll approve the comment. Okay, I can't do anything right now, and the chat disappears once the video is over. Yeah, I know that there was some choppiness on the mic earlier because the feed was kind of screwing around. So anyway, the Packers and the Packers, Cowboys, Giants. You talk about who are the premier franchises in the NFL. Of course, you should never forget New England. For years, they were not a premier team. Those teams have to do well in order for people to watch the games. But if you have a lot of these games on prime time, like I've seen Indianapolis against Tennessee at one point. No, nobody gives a fuck about that game. Nobody, even in Tennessee. In Tennessee, I think at one point this season, the Volunteers, the college football team for the University of Tennessee, had higher TV ratings than the Titans. And the NFL is basically running around like a headless chicken, trying to pretend that it's relevant. They've destroyed themselves. These anthem protests are just a symptom of a larger sickness, okay? And I'll read you an article now. I know that you guys are probably getting tired like me. So this is the last thing that we're going to cover. This is from the San Jose Mercury News, where they were covering Dwight Clark Day in Dwight Clark Day in San Francisco. I'll show you the screen. There's Dwight Clark. Okay. I think you guys should be able to see it now. It says, 49ers fans didn't show up for Dwight Clark, and that is shameful. Okay? And it says 49ers fans didn't live up to their quote-unquote faithful billing on Sunday when the whistle blew to signal the end of the first half of Sunday's game against the Cowboys. I saw a torrent of fans at the not even close to full Levi Stadium, many wearing Cowboys blue, but just as many in red and gold, head to the concourse. I'm not sure if they could see the well-deserved and heart-wrenching halftime ceremony for 49ers legend, great Dwight Clark, who was battling ALS and wanted to see his teammates flown in for the occasion one last time. But I do know that Clark couldn't see them because they weren't in their seats. Clark deserved better. We've heard excuses every week since Levi Stadium became the 49ers' primary residence. The tickets are too expensive. The drive is too long from San Francisco. The sun on the east side of the stadium is too intense, and the team is too poor. Those excuses hold water every other week, but they didn't fly this Sunday. They certainly weren't acceptable for the Niners fans who sold their tickets to Cowboys fans, and they were particularly unacceptable for any able-bodied fan wearing red in the stadium on Sunday who opted to leave their seats for the halftime ceremony. Joe Montana, who opened the ceremony, and Clark spoke to a third full stadium. Clark deserved better. The 49ers organization did a great thing on Sunday. A team that has been synonymous with missteps over the years and is often chided for forgetting the franchise's history, deserves credit for flying so many of Clark's teammates in for the game and for dedicating the day to the man whose catch sparked a dynasty. The 49ers front office did their part. Niners fans didn't. Clark deserved better. Niners fans talk about the team's illustrious history in reverent tones, as they should. I was even close to being born when the catch happened, but I knew the full story of what went down on that cold afternoon at Candlestick Park in 1981 before I went to high school. I can only imagine that families of 49ers fans taught their kids much earlier than my father did. The catch was a seminal moment in NFL and 49ers history, and 36 years later, Clark's presence should have every 49ers fan stand at attention. That wasn't what I saw when Clark spoke Sunday. Sunday was an opportunity for every Niners fan to show how faithful they really are. You can't convince me the people who remain in the stands are the only Niners fans who make that claim. Clark deserved better. Sunday should have been the highlight of a lost 2017 season for Niners fans. Yes, the team is winless, but what did you expect from the squad, really? The combination of seeing C.J. Beathard's first game as a 49ers starter and the chance to honor Clark, perhaps for the last time, should have been more than enough for any so-called diehard 49ers fan to get to the South Bay on Sunday. Save the excuses for another week. This was one week where every Niners fan should have made a concerted effort to be in the house, forget the game, be there for halftime, but they didn't show up. Cue the excuses, and too many of those who were in attendance weren't present. I keep saying it because it's true. Clark deserved better. So I have a number of comments on that. This is a guy who he knows that his team is the center. Even with Kaepernick gone, they still have Eric Reed, who's one of the protesters in the anthem controversy. And I think he's the de facto leader of it now, at least with the Niners. He knows that a lot of people are pissed off because the NFL players aren't willing to give the slightest respect to the national anthem, and instead they sit on the sidelines or they kneel. And now he's trying to guilt them by claiming, we have to respect Dwight Clark. He's the reason that our team ever became important. Well, once you disparage the memory of one thing, there's nothing to prevent people from doing it for something completely unrelated. And those fans would say the same thing, and it's a parallel. A lot of these protesting players, they say, well, we don't protest the flag and the anthem. We're just protesting on behalf of this cause of the police brutality and black men not getting justice and the prison pipeline and whatever. Which, it's okay. I think some of them have, some of them have a well-developed concept of it. Others that have protested. Notice that 200 people protested a few weeks ago. Today, only 22 did. Okay? What happened to the ones that stopped? I don't know. Maybe they stopped caring. Maybe people don't give a fuck anymore. But yeah, the fans can say the same thing now, and he actually listed the whole case. The fact that Levi Stadium is far away from the original base of where the fans live, which is the North Bay, San Francisco and Daly City, all those areas I'm not very familiar with the San Francisco area, thank God. Fuck them. But San Francisco, it was Candlestick Park. That was the place to be. It was Joe Montana. It was Jerry Rice. What's the other guy's name? Roger Craig. Ronnie Lott. Classic team. I hated them. But that was what it was about. It was about the North Bay. And they moved the team to Santa Monica and the South Bay, to this yuppie-friendly stadium where people in the shitty seats, they get blasted by sunlight all day. People hate it. People hate Levi Stadium. They hate the owner. The team has played like dog shit for the past few years. Okay, and I'm channeling the evil Niners fan angst here. They've lost. This is the thing. They had Jim Harbaugh, a guy who led the team to the Super Bowl. The team fell apart because the front office was fighting with Harbaugh, and Harbaugh was fighting with them because he's a dick. So then he gets fired. They hire this idiot, Jim Tomsula, who did nothing, was literally just a placeholder, and they go 3-13. Who do they hire in his place? So he lasted one season. Who do they hire in his place? This idiot Chip Kelly with his hurry-up offense that failed in Philadelphia. They hire him in order to take the team back with Blaine Gabbert as the new quarterback and Colin Kaepernick as the backup. And then the Anthem controversy breaks out, and the 49ers go 2-14 in 2016. Okay, 2-14. Kaepernick wins one game. Gabbert won the other one. Kaepernick lost 10 games that season. Okay, clearly not the same guy he was in the past. Wasn't the worst quarterback in the NFL, but this controversy, people could not stand him, and then he gets an offer to come back. Not really an offer, but he has the option to turn down an extension to his contract or to accept an extension, and he turns it down. And yet there's people who still take it, and they're like, he's such a noble person, whatever. No, this is a guy, he had the chance to stay with the team that raised him from, his status as a backup back in 2011. He replaces Alex Smith, who's now having a phenomenal season over in Kansas City. He's not they're not undefeated anymore. I think they've had 2 losses, but that Kaepernick turned down a chance to help his team. He would have had a new coach, Kyle Shanahan. Maybe the 49ers would have been better with Colin Kaepernick. I don't think they would have been great, but it's possible that he would have been better, or they would have been better. Instead, they have to take a cast off Brian Hoyer, who, he didn't play awfully. He didn't play a horrible game in San Francisco. He's had a few, passable games. But the team's defense is just a wreck. Okay? And then this guy has the gall to call out the fans. No, this team is 0-7. They've gotten ripped apart, ripped to shreds several weeks. So other weeks they'll play close and then they'll lose. I think with Arizona they lost in overtime on a touchdown, for example. But no, the San Francisco 49ers fans that are not showing up to the games, I can tell you, I live here in Cleveland. There's plenty of people that every year do that because that when you put out consistently just a garbage product, you are under no obligation to come. And the NFL is a garbage product now. You saw today this Jamel Hill, this idiot from ESPN, actually said, yeah, I think I deserve to be suspended. Well, no shit. Even if she's lying and she's just pretending to feel contrition, people now know, and she has to, she has to play the game now in order to stay at ESPN. They know that this is a woman who cares more about keeping her job than about standing on, standing on principle. If she really was standing on principle, I think she would have resigned from ESPN and joined one of these more hard left outlets. She could join TYT, and I think she would do well at TYT because she's the type of person the TYT network cultivates. So, yes, the NFL, ESPN, a lot of these sports, not baseball. Baseball is okay, but most of these, entertainment fields, and sports is included in entertainment. They're putting out garbage product, and then they're injecting, in order to make it rancid garbage, they're injecting politics into it. So that's about it. I'll take one more look at the comments in the chat, and then I'll have to go because I'm about to seriously drop dead. Yeah, that's about it. So thanks, J-Man, for staying with me today, and for the other viewer. And anybody else who's joined in, please like this video. Tune in next time. Propose a topic in the comments. Why not? You're here anyway. You're not doing something else, maybe you are doing something else. Maybe you're over there in your cabin over in Montana, plotting some sort of devious scheme to, seize control of the financial system or the electrical grid. I don't know what J-Man does out there. I have no idea why he wants to listen to me, because I don't know. Sometimes I wonder why I would even listen to me. But, I think we found some common ground today. Would you agree? I think we have. I think, I've given credence to all the viewpoints here. I haven't, except these morons in the CBC. I mean, really, people deserve better. So yeah, comment whatever you want. Call me an asshole. Complain about my hair gel. Whatever you want. Talk about topics you want to hear about. Say that I owe the CIA an apology. Whatever you want. And have a great night. This is Bold Like a Leopard for the American Gladio stream. Wishing you a happy week, and much more happiness to come as we watch this chaos unfold with the DNC, which I think is going to be a topic to come. I'm going to probably introduce that in the next couple of days. Good night.